Hey AgEcon, welcome back to our next section. We learned about demand in the previous videos, and now we're going to switch gears and learn a little bit about supply. So supply is the side that we don't necessarily think about or see as consumers because we're obviously the ones that go to the store and demand or ask or buy things. We're not necessarily thinking about the toilet paper that we're putting in our cart and the business that goes behind that and all of the steps that occur through that supply chain that we talked about in the article. So supply in general is defined as the willingness and ability of sellers to produce and offer to sell different quantities of a product at different prices during a specific period of time. So looking back at that toilet paper case study, we saw that there was a lot of demand that occurred in March 2020 for toilet paper, right? So what do you think happened to suppliers at that time? Do you think that they were going to be producing more or less or stay the same? Well, even though in reality the amount of waste product that we as humans were producing wasn't really going up, it was remaining constant. At that time, suppliers decided to supply more. Now, do you think we could snap our fingers and overnight, boom, all of the store shelves are restocked and everyone has toilet paper and canned goods and all those things that were going scarce? No, it takes time, and especially with some of our other products like we saw in that article that we read, there is a supply chain that's involved, right? So when we are canning canned goods, for example, we're not just concerned about the tomatoes that we put in our can of diced tomatoes, right? We're worrying about steel, aluminum, et cetera, and the labor that's needed to produce that. Those are all different factors of production that go into producing that unit, right? There's a specific supply chain that's involved. So it takes time for that effect to be felt by everyone in the supply chain and for those store shelves to get restocked. So and the reason why then our demand changes is because the prices are going to go up because suppliers are going to have limited resources and limited products available. So they're going to have to charge more, and that's going to be felt on the demand side because as consumers, we're going to need to figure out what we want to sacrifice if we really want to buy that extra unit of toilet paper, that extra canned good, whatnot. So some big deal questions. So if we know that a demand graph is downward sloping, what do you suppose a supply graph may look like? If you answered positively sloping, you'd be correct. Okay. So if the price of a good that a supplier sells goes up, do you think they're going to want to sell more or fewer units of that? Okay, so let's take a look at this graph. So supply graph is positively sloping, upward sloping, supply to the sky, right? So we see here that if the producer was going to charge less than 40 cents for a chocolate bar, fewer than 100 people would want to demand that product. Okay? Again, all of this is based off of market research and estimates, not necessarily perfect, but you just get the idea. But if we start to go up this graph and we notice, ooh, over $2, right? We're charging over $2. Let's supply over 500 chocolate bars. Now, it's not to say that we're going to be getting all of those sold, but generally companies are going to want to produce more units that are valued at a higher price so they make more money, if that makes sense, right? So on the flip side, if the price of a good that a supplier sells goes down, do you think they're going to want to sell more or fewer units? The correct answer is fewer. And again, this goes back to production possibilities, frontiers, right? So let's say that this company fictitiously can produce chocolate bars or it can produce Little Debbie snack cakes, right? If the value of chocolate bars is going down and consumers aren't going to want to buy as many, perhaps the company should look into making Little Debbie snack cakes instead, because the value might be perceived differently by consumers. They may want to buy more of those, therefore helping increase profit and revenue for the company. So what factors might limit sellers' ability and willingness to supply a good or service? Well, this kind of goes back to our lesson on production possibilities frontier, right? The amount of employees that we have. If we have to lay off a bunch of employees, we're going to be less willing to supply and less able to supply more items because we have fewer people working. Same thing with limited technologies, right? If the price of inputs goes up, so if let's say that we're making brownies and cookies like we did in our PPF example in the last lecture, and let's say there's a huge shortage on the wheat market and the price for flour is just going through the roof. Because the price of wheat and flour is going up, we're going to feel that as suppliers and be less willing and able to purchase more flour to produce cookies and brownies to meet the demand. There are a lot of other factors that go into determining the amount of goods that a supplier can produce and sell. We're going to talk about those a little bit later in the semester, but those are just a couple to get you started. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.